couple episodes ago, I told you guys like the list of the 4 or 5 people that I talk to regularly in my life. And since then, that list has gotten even smaller. And I haven't had fallouts with anybody. I still get along with all the people on the list and love all the people that I mentioned. But I just have been spending all my time by myself. So when I get people hitting me up online and being like, oh, this person is talking about you, I'm always just like, that has nothing to do with my life.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Thai Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Thai Rivera. I'm your host, Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. We're going to start this episode like we start every episode, and that's by... I couldn't get through it without messing up, flubbing my lines. I'm going to get another producer at some point, but right now is not obviously that episode, but I am going to get another producer. But yeah, flubbing my lines. We're going to start this episode like we start every episode, and that's by summoning the spirit of Snoop Bijou. And I know that the way I started this episode off was by talking about the way people are trying to get my attention at different points online. But I don't really get that. I mean, and it's not something I'm going to pretend that really bothers me because I give it almost no attention at all. It's like I'll see something and then I'll be like, oh yeah, that's nothing. I'm not paying attention to that. Because I really do live in a bubble, and not in a bad way. When I want to see people, I can see people. When I want to hang out with people, I can hang out with people. And I still get invited to things, and I just don't go. I have no interest in being anywhere, and it's not in a bad way. I've been going to the gym like I'm supposed to, and I create content. Not as much as I'd like to, but you know, the editing is a process. Like when I have to edit, I actually do edit. And if you've seen my videos, that's why I like doing my podcast, even though last week I wasn't able to do it because I ended up going to see Blair White last week. That's something I did that was just for the fun of it. And I went to go see Blair White. Leonardo was in town, so she went with me. Ariel, which I'm going to post an episode where me and Ariel are doing a podcast together, my podcast together. And, then Ariel's girlfriend, Vanessa, she was there as well. And so we all sat together and had a good time and enjoyed it. But like, I really do live in a bubble for the most part. And I really am liking that. And when I'm ready to be in circulation again, I will. But that's not what my heart is telling me to do. And, you know, I am handling the Bijou situation, or handled the Bijou situation really well. You know, I mean, like, I was very, very sad for quite a minute there. And still, I will have my moments where I really obsess on her in my mind, just think about her a lot. But even that, you know, a few people online, when they're trying to argue with me, have brought that up because it's on my social media. You know, there's a picture where I'm like basically saying goodbye to her in the picture on social media. And I always knew that if people got mad at me, they would bring that up, or they would mention something about the podcast if they're crazy enough to listen to the podcast. So like that stuff, it doesn't surprise me. That's the internet being the internet. And if you think that after all these years on the internet, I didn't know that people would do that, you're out of your mind. Like, of course I knew people would do that. But the thing people don't understand about me is that nobody can use anything that I put out publicly to hurt me, because I put it out there knowing that people would do that. And anytime I talk about anything online, anytime you guys see me say anything online that seems extremely personal, understand that I've diffused that by even putting it online, because anything that's personal enough that it would actually hurt me would be like me specific. Like only I would know what that is, because one, a lot of people haven't lived my life with me. I'm not a person who's been in relationships all throughout my life, like consistently, where like so many things in my life, and this is something that I like, but at the same time, it's kind of a weird situation. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to it. So I'll just say what it is. I really live so much of my life by myself and away from everybody. And it's been like that for so long now that there's really no witnesses to what have been, for me, the most tragic parts of my life. Like when I got the most sad in my life, at any point that I've been the most sad that I've been in my life, nobody's been around for that. It's just been me. If anybody were to ever pay attention and knew about like when I was engaged and then that broke up in the most terrible way possible. I've talked about it on my podcast before, but there was so much like pain and healing that happened in the days after that, because I had to go file a restraining order. I had to clean up all the mess from all the stuff he broke in the apartment. But it was just me by myself. And yeah, Bijou was there, but Bijou was very non-judgmental in that way. And I do mean that because, like, there was glass broken everywhere, a lot of broken glass. And I would not let Bijou get cut or even get close to that glass. So what I did was I immediately put her in her carrier, which is a plastic carrier. So she was very much away from the glass. And it took me 4 hours, no lie, 4 hours to clean up that glass. And in between, I took her to go potty and maybe we walked around the apartment complex that I lived at that time. It was a really small building. I liked that apartment. I liked the courtyard area. And we lived right in the courtyard, in the center of the courtyard. I really liked that apartment. And I did that with her. So she was a part of that process. But you know what it's like. If we're being 100% honest, when you're with the dog, their spirit is with you. Like you feel them with you, but you can't talk to them, and they're obviously never going to tell anybody what it was they saw or what it was that you went through during that time, and thank God for it, because our dogs hold all of our secrets when it comes down to it. They see everything. And so like, that would have been like a rough time for me. But I handled everything that I had to handle by myself. I didn't have anybody with me, and I'm not the kind of person that while I'm in a relationship with somebody, I've got somebody on the side that can drop in or come help me at that time. Then during COVID, when it was the shutdown, the lockdown, whatever you want to call it, like that, it was just me and Bijou. And so people will act like they know something about me, and it's like, what's public. That's all anybody knows about me, is what's public, is what I choose to share. So I don't know why anybody ever thinks they'd be able to get to me, especially by talking about my dog of all things. Like I said, I know some people would be like, that's disgusting. I can't believe they stoop so low. But I'm always like, yeah, that's the internet. So I'm not at all, I'll block people for that kind of stuff, but just for the unoriginality of it, because, somebody once tried to, well, a couple of people, actually 3 or 4 people, have brought up my sister. She died. We're coming up on the anniversary of that. That's October 31st. Well, between the night of the 31st and November 1st is when she died. And, nobody can make me feel any kind of way about that. People have implied that I killed her, and like for me, when people say stuff like that is so ridiculous because it's just like if you knew the way that went down and how I was on the complete other side of town, and I still feel bad about that. But again, nobody can make me feel bad about something I choose to talk about. But I have talked about that before. The thing that I felt bad about that night, or that morning, I should say, because I found out at, I don't know, it was like 9 or 10 in the morning, something like that. But my mom had called me to tell me, which my mom, I don't know if I've told you guys this before, but my mom is not a phone person. She rarely even has a phone on her. She refuses to actually have a phone, even though my dad has asked her repeatedly to please have a phone. And she's not a person who's out all the time. She's never out. You know, she does her stuff at home. She watches her shows, and she's in surprisingly good shape because she's active around the house, you know, the yard, taken care of. They have a little dog and stuff like that. They have their own situation, you know, and but my mom stays active around the house. And so she's not like fat, she's not a shut-in, she's not anything. She's just a lady that minds her own business and has her own life and has her own house and doesn't have to. Maybe that's why I'm the way that I am, is because I come from a family that's very much like that. But when my mom called me to tell me my sister had died, I didn't know that they wanted me to go to my sister's house. I thought they meant that she was gone and, you know, kind of catch up with them later kind of thing. That's what I thought. But then I ended up finding out later that they would have preferred that I was there with them. And so I'll always feel bad about that to a degree, but nobody can make me feel bad about that, because only I know the details of that in the way that it went down exactly. And the reason that even though if I had known they wanted me there, I definitely would have gone. But I rolled over and went back to sleep. And that's because I knew that that would be one of the few times in my life where I was going to have to be protective of my parents, because your parents usually take care of you. You know, all your life, your parents protect you, they shelter you, they teach you the things you need to know, you know, or at least my parents were good with that. Like when it comes to all the real parenting stuff, my parents were great with that, with teaching me even how to be a good person. You know, sometimes people will try to imply that I'm a bad person, and it's like, I never got to be a truly bad person. Like, yeah, I can be a troll sometimes, and I'll definitely have fun saying things to people that nobody else will say to them, because once in a while they get a little sassy with me, and well, more than a little sassy, and I'm like, okay, let me tell you some things you never would have thought about yourself that I just happened to notice, because I was raised not to notice a person's flaws, but that had an opposite effect on my brain. And so it made it so as soon as I see somebody, as soon as I meet somebody, I notice all of their flaws, because I'm not supposed to notice their flaws. So it's like I do a scan to notice all the things that I'm not supposed to notice. And obviously the lesson didn't go that deep into me, because if I'm friends with you or you're friendly, I'll never bring any of that stuff up. But if you get shitty with me, I will list all of it to you and make you very insecure, because all of these things will be things that probably nobody ever told you before. You might not even been told you before. And so, and I don't regret that part, or I don't feel bad about that. Like, people act like you're supposed to feel bad, because one of the things that people do, because I'm very astute, and I definitely am very in tune. I'm a true empath, so which can work both ways. Like, people always think of empaths like, oh, they must be super sensitive. No, there's a thing called a dark empath, and I have both traits because I'm just an empath. So I can feel people's insecurities. I can feel when people are sad. I can feel like almost everything. That's why I'm good at comedy, is because I do everything off of feel. It really is me feeling people's energy and deciding what I need to do with that. There are times when I decide to go against that during comedy, and I really can turn a room on me. It's been a long time since I've done it like that. But there's times when I feel that they're just trying to be like difficult with me. And so sometimes I'll meet their energy with that same energy because that's what I feel and that's what I know is going on. And I'm like, I'm going to go at this head on. And, but as far as me, like, genuinely not being a good person, I was never allowed to be that because my mom would always truly check me and she wouldn't do it in a mean way. She wasn't like a bad person about it, but she would just ask me about stories, or I would tell her about stories. And then I would tell her, she would ask a couple questions like, and then what did you say? And then what did they say? And, because I'd be telling her a story about me and my friends and stuff like that. And some of my friends were, they're kids, so they're assholes. Kids are assholes. And so sometimes they would gang up on people, like as far as mentally goes, or, just being kind of not necessarily bullies, but just, how kids are. Like, I think they call it othering people. That would be the best terminology for the kind of stuff they would do. So it's kind of like, we're cool, you're not. And so, kind of dismissive of them. And when I was young, sometimes because my mom knew that that's what my friends were like, and what are you going to do? Like, people like your son. And so I'm gonna hang out with people that are cool. I mean, like, I also was friends with there was a little girl that had birth defects, and I used to play with her a lot, on the playground. She was super sweet. Her name was Jenny. And sometimes I wonder what happened to Jenny, because she was such a nice girl. And sometimes people would try to be mean to her, but I was protective of her in a good way. Not overly so, because, we were kids, and so she would be a fun kid like everybody else. But sometimes people would try to be mean to her, and I would not put up with that. That's kind of why we were friends, because she knew that I was safe, and she knew that she could play with me, and I would treat her like any other one of the kids, as long as no other kids tried to be shitty with her, because then I would step in. And I'm not acting like I was a scary kid or whatever, but just, a lot of times if somebody's being a particular way with someone, and you are morally right as far as, hey, you shouldn't be treating this person like that. That's no way to act. A lot of times people will fall back at that point and just be like, yeah, you're right. It's usually because nobody says anything that people will truly be shitty with other people or mistreat them. It's usually because nobody says, like, hey, that's not the way we do it. But yeah, so when I would be telling my mom stories about things that happened at school or things that happened when we were out playing, because I did have a lot of freedom when I was growing up, because I grew up in the desert. Like, we had a lot of desert around us, and our town was definitely a walking town for the kids. Like we'd walk all over that town, like, for real, all over that town, or walk, ride bikes, all the stuff kids do. But we would do it all over town because, like, the working part of our town, the actual functional part of our town, wasn't that big. And so you could ride your bike to the mall, or there were 4 or 5 different parks, or, the schools, so that you could, ride your bike. Some of my friends would skateboard. I never was able to skateboard, but some of my friends would skateboard, and I'd ride my bike with them while they were skateboarding. But anyway, yeah, so my mom, I'd be telling her stories about things that happen, and she would ask me about those things. She would really, in some cases, sorry to make you guys yawn, in some cases, really run it down with me. And because she knew that from the way I just being, now I see it. When I was younger, I thought it was like magic. But now that I'm older, I can see because I have nephews and nieces. And sometimes they're telling me stories, and in my head, I'm sort of like, okay, I know you guys were being assholes, or, that kind of thing. But since she would ask me these questions, she would end up fishing it out of me that, maybe we weren't on our best behavior out there. And then she would tell me, well, if you continue to do that kind of stuff, I'm not going to like you. And that's literally what she would tell me. It's one of my favorite things about, I mean, I say a lot of things are my favorite things about my mom, but it's because I really love my mom, and there's not a lot that I don't like about, there definitely are things I don't like about her. You know what I mean? Like personality, like, like sometimes she's a little bit too stubborn. She's a Taurus. And so, but, never anything like where I can say I hate my mom, or, it's just little personality things that the older they get, some of them, the more you begin to, if you don't like them, you at least appreciate them, because you begin to realize that, yeah, that's one of your quirks, and maybe some would say a character flaw, but it's also kind of a hallmark, and it also does end up being one of the things that you're sure you're going to miss when you're not lucky enough to have these people around anymore. So it's like you go in and out through your life with the people that you're family with. In my experience, that's what it is, because you have, like, when you're young and you really need them, when you're little and you really need them, and that's when you really bond with them, if you're lucky, if you're fortunate. I'm not speaking for everybody. I know some people come from broken homes, and I know some people had different situations going on in their upbringing that would make them less than ideal. But, like, we were a family that had problems like any other family. But overall, I can honestly say that I come from a loving family, and I'm happy to come from the family that I do come from. I'm happy to have had the experiences that I had growing up. So, like, sometimes people ask me about, what, or will be talking about things like Christmas and memories they had from growing up. And for me, when it comes to Christmas, I remember really believing there was a Santa for a very long time, because the way that my mom and dad would do Christmas for us, which my dad would even admit was my mom actually, like, she was the mastermind, right? Because she would pay attention to what it was we wanted, and then sometimes she would have us outright write Christmas lists. Now, we still will write Christmas lists, but obviously we're adults, so we write less stuff on the Christmas list, but we still turn in Christmas lists to Santa in my family, even though we're all well into our adult years. But when I was young, it was like I would try to stay up as late as I could on Christmas Eve. I was always a night person, even though my mom had a curfew or a bedtime of 8 o'clock. For a lot of my life, it was 8 o'clock would just lead to me laying there for hours and hours not sleeping. But that's neither here nor there. So anyway, when I became, oh, and Tooth Fairy was an actual thing in our house. And yeah, it was an actual thing where you would put your tooth under your pillow, you go to sleep, and again, I would try to stay up all night for the Tooth Fairy so that I could catch the Tooth Fairy. Never caught the Tooth Fairy. My tooth was always gone, and I did always wake up with money under my pillow. And I don't even know if people do Tooth Fairy anymore like that, but we had Tooth Fairy in our house. And for Christmas, like I said, I would stay up all night or try to stay up all night. My parents would tell me to go to sleep early. If not, Santa wasn't going to come. And I would say, okay. And I'd go lay down, and I'd just be awake, waiting for Santa. And I don't know what time my parents would wait until to actually put the gifts out. All I know is that we would wake up super early because we couldn't wait to wake up. So around 5 or 6 a.m., we would wake up, and my parents would have a rule sometimes where we would have to go back to sleep until they were ready to wake up, which wasn't going to be too much later, like maybe 7 or 8. But if we came in at 5 a.m., like came into their room and we're like, can we open presents? They'd be like, nope, you got to go to sleep for a couple more hours, and you have to go back to bed and try to sleep for a couple more hours. But yeah, I just remember that when we were little, me and my sisters, we would wake up for Christmas and there would just be bikes and toys and boxes and just stuff. And I mean a lot of stuff. Like Christmas was an actual thing. My mom really loves Christmas, so that makes sense. But like the amount of stuff that we would get for Christmas really was like fun and ridiculous and nice. And so, yeah, what I was saying is there are a lot of things that I like about the way I grew up. And there were different points where for our family, things were a little more rough or whatever, but you never knew that on Christmas. And also, you never, you never felt like it was your thing to worry about. It always was like, these are grown up problems. You enjoy being a kid. You guys enjoy being kids. And so, and I would imagine that my sisters experienced the same thing that I did. Like I said, things were never perfect, but life was pretty good and there wasn't a lot for us to worry about. And so, but then also there was very much a separation between us as kids and my parents as the parents. And so they were definitely there to guide us. And tonight I was doing a podcast with a friend, over the computer. It's actually one of my friends that really has a big channel. And so that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks or something like that. But we were talking, and I was saying at a point, because we were talking about the way things work with social media and all that stuff, and I just said I do think that it's a parent's job to say no in a lot of cases, because that's the way I was raised, where my parents were very nice to us, but they weren't trying to be our best friends. They definitely weren't afraid to tell us no, and they definitely didn't mind if we weren't happy with certain decisions they made. That's why, like I said, when my mom knew that I was being an asshole or me and my friends were being assholes, and she would say, if you keep doing that, I'm not going to like you, I knew what she meant like that. Like, I'll always love you as my son, but I'm not going to like you as a person, and I'm not going to consider you my friend because you're not behaving in a way that would make me proud or that shows that you were actually raised the right way. And my mom, even though she was didn't really care about the outside world very much, at the same time she wanted us to be like, she wanted us to actually show the fact that we were raised right. I don't think any parents, unless they're really just terrible people, terrible parents, but I don't think any parents want you out there making them look bad. Like, it's like, look like you were raised by somebody. Act like you know how to behave and be a good person just because you should be a good person, but also because why are you going to make all of us look like assholes? Or why are you going to make it look like nobody taught you better than this? And so, I keep all of that in mind even to this day. And obviously now the things I do are not a reflection of my family because I'm so far past being their kid, that really what I do and say is on me. But I keep that in mind just because why would you want people thinking that you weren't raised right or you weren't raised well? And that's what I think of a lot of the people that try to get my attention over and over, even though I'm not going to pay attention to anything that I don't want to pay attention to. And they will try to say like worse and worse things about me and stuff like that. And like I said, every once in a while somebody will drop, oh, this person said this about you, or this person just recently said that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care, because that's the other thing that people don't understand is if you're not raised well enough, weren't raised well enough to know how to conduct yourself, and also to understand when somebody just isn't interested in being your friend or doesn't really care what it is you're talking about or for your existence at all, which I can honestly say that's the way I feel about the people that don't like me, or that I don't even know if you could say don't like, because it's just people that I don't pay attention to. But like usually what'll get me to feel that way about you, where I just will not acknowledge your existence on any level, is me realizing that you really weren't raised well. Like you really either didn't have parents, or maybe your parents died when you were young and nobody gave you actual guidance. A lot of times I'll notice that with people that were raised by their grandparents, and nothing against, because, you know, I know plenty of kids that have been raised by their grandparents. My sister, when she died, my parents took care of my nephews and nieces, and they were raised really well, but they were raised more like my brothers and sisters, to the point where at this point they usually refer to my mom and dad as mom and dad. Well, they'll do it interchangeably, you know. Sometimes they'll refer to them as nana and tata, and sometimes they'll refer to them as mom and dad. And I don't have a preference either way for the way they address my parents, because their relationship with my parents is very much its own thing. But I do look at my nephews and nieces, even though they treat me with respect as their uncle. Like they do call me Theo. That's, you know, uncle, of course. But that's what they call me pretty exclusively. Sometimes they'll say Theo T, but that's more from when they were little. But they'll always say Theo is what they'll say, at least. They'll say it like it's my name. And, but I do feel a lot like they're, you know, my little brothers and sisters. Not as much, you know, but at the same time, yeah, I know I'm their uncle, and there's certain things that I don't do around them, you know, like I don't drink and smoke. Like I've told you guys before, I think that if I feel like it, I will have a drink every once in a while. Or if I feel like it, I will smoke something every once in a while, you know. Only the wacky tobacco, nothing else. What else would be to smoke? Oh, I smoke cigarettes. That's regular too. But even cigarettes, I don't smoke cigarettes around my nephews and nieces, or not where they can see it. Like, I'm not weird enough about it. Like, if I'm at my parents' house, there's a bench that I sit on that's in front of their house that I'll smoke a cigarette. But if my parents even come out, even though I'm a grown ass man, if my parents come out, I'll usually put the cigarette down, or I'll put it out. I don't like smoking cigarettes in front of my parents, even though they wouldn't care that I do. My nephews and nieces, I don't smoke cigarettes in front of them. Again, they know that I do. And if they happen to walk outside or whatever, I'll just hold my cigarette down. I'm not going to put it out or whatever, but I'll just hold my cigarette down. And they also know that I don't like smoking around them. So they'll usually ask me whatever questions they have to ask me, or just say hello, and then either go inside the house or go to the garage where they can't see me, you know, so I can finish my cigarette. And then when I'm done with my cigarette, I make my way over to them again. But like I said, we have a very comfortable relationship, me and my nephews and nieces, where it is like they are, like I said, like younger siblings. But at the same time, we know what the deal is. We know I'm their uncle, and we know that I'm not going to be drinking in front of them, and I don't have an interest in ever, you know, passing them a blunt or any of that kind of stuff. It's just, I feel like that's important, when you're, and not for every family though, because I know people that are like that. And I think a lot of people would be surprised about how non-judgmental I am when it comes to the way that other people live their lives. If you and your nephews and nieces have that kind of relationship, and you do drink in front of them and you do smoke in front of them, that kind of stuff, I don't even think about that if I'm hanging out with you and your nephews and nieces or your family. I just don't. But I just wouldn't in front of my family. Um, I dated one guy that was like that, where he used to really party with his family, his nephews and nieces, and his sister, which with my sisters, I used to get down with my sisters. We used to really party. We were good friends, me and my sisters, when we were younger. Again, we're siblings, so we had our things where we didn't like each other. We'd get into it and not talk to each other for a while. But we did have a good relationship. I don't know, when it comes to the whole, like I said, me being non judgmental, I think that spills over into so many parts of my life that it's frustrating for a lot of my online audience. I don't mean you guys bothering us, but I do mean like the people that watch my regular videos, because people have this idea that if you think a particular way or if you express certain opinions, that means you must go with these other kind of, I guess they would be borderline dogmatic principles. And I just don't. I judge most things on case by case. So where I'll make videos where I mention how ridiculous it is that some people like try to force the non-binary thing on all of us and make us do they them pronouns. For the most part, anybody that meets me knows I'm not going to do anything that I don't want to do. So people really don't push that on me that way. I've only had a few people get sensitive with me at different points in my life, and it was usually because I was friends with them and they wanted me to respect their identity. And I was just like, hey, I don't really care about your identity. I'm not here to swipe at it. I'm also not here to feed it. So you navigate yourself accordingly, but I will be putting down boundaries. And so I don't think people understand though how little I mind what it is other people choose to do, as long as they're not trying to make me be a participant in it. So sometimes people will be like, well, people need to understand reality. And well, I hate to break it to everybody, as much as everybody would try to act like there's only one reality, different people experience different types of reality. And that's not just due to mental illness or whatever people would try to attribute it to. It's like perception is reality. That's an old saying. Everybody's heard it before, but perception is reality. And so if you perceive something to be a particular way and everybody around you perceives that to be a particular way as well, then that's your guys' reality. And it may be different from my reality. Like some people would say that Christmas sucks and that you never get the stuff you want and there is no such thing as Santa. But when I was younger, the reality was Christmas was great and I got pretty much everything I ever wanted. And I really did feel like there was a Santa. And so, some people would say that no matter what, relationships aren't meant to last and people aren't meant to be together forever. But my parents have been together for over 50 years. And they've had a full marriage. So, yeah, things have gone wrong at different points and nothing has ever been perfect. But my parents are still together. And I don't think that at this point they're going to break up or they're going to get a divorce. I couldn't imagine that happening at this point. I mean, like, if they did, I'd be supportive of both of them, but I'd be like, why now? Like, if you guys ask me, you seem pretty chill. You seem pretty chill compared to some of the other years. You know, you want me to try to remember what years? Because I have a terrible memory, but I think I can remember what years in school I was in when different things happened. So maybe we need to run through some of the highlights, and you guys will realize how good you guys have it at this point in time. But yeah, so that also is reality for me, where for them, a reality could be a broken home. Then when people say, you know, that people are definitely straight, you know, there are people that are definitely straight, but I know the way that my brain works. I know what I'm attracted to, and I know what I've been attracted to pretty much my whole life. So I'm not gonna act like my being gay isn't a reality, just like another person's being straight is a reality. And the realities that go with each one of those, excuse me. Right now, you might not be tired. Apparently, I am. That's my reality, which I know I am tired because I've been waking up the last couple of days in the morning, which is very rare for me, and I don't know when that's going to fall off. Probably after today. I think, like, one thing I'll tell you guys that I do love about my body and the way that my body works is that my body really will, like, plan for things I have coming up if I have times where I have to be on a daytime schedule. And doing that podcast today was pretty important to me because I really do like this person. Yeah, there are times that I guess I would do something because I'm being paid is why I'll usually do things that I otherwise wouldn't do, to tell you the truth. Like, I don't really care about numbers like that. Like, as far as, oh, I need to go on a podcast to promote, like that kind of thing. I don't usually think in those terms because there's not usually like a project that I'm really trying to promote or anything like that. And so most of the stuff I do is either just because I think it's fun and I really want to do it, or because I'm being paid, or both. And this was an unpaid podcast appearance, but it's somebody that I really do like and I really do respect. And we've been trying to plan me being on their podcast for a while now. And like I said, the respect part is the most important thing in that situation because I really do respect this person. I really do like this person and have for long before they ever knew that I was a thing, you know, because we met through the social media space and being that, you know, like both being content creators. But I've known about them for years and years now. And so, but yeah, so I really did want to do that. And my body just set itself because, you know, usually I'm an extreme night person. And last week it was all about that. And then just at a point, I think it was like Friday or something like that, then my schedule started like changing back around. You know, the Blair White situation helped too, because since I went to her show on last Wednesday was what it was. And that's why I didn't put out the podcast or record the podcast. But since I went to her show on Wednesday, that made it so that I had to wake up earlier than I would usually wake up during the day like that, because her show was at 7. That's how ridiculous my schedule was. At 7 seemed kind of like an early morning, like to have to be there by 7. But I also had some appointment that same day, which I can't remember what it was. But I had an appointment earlier that day as well. And so I had to do that. And then I had to be up for Blair's thing. And I remember I took a nap in between. I do remember taking a nap for like an hour or two. But that still wasn't enough to sleep to make up for all the time that I didn't sleep the night before. Because I really didn't sleep the night before at all that much. And so having to be at Blair's thing made it so that I would be up a little bit later. And then from there, my schedule just kind of adjusted itself. And there will always be a day where when my body is readjusting that way, that I'll sleep way more than I should. And that turned out to be, I think it was Saturday, just this past Saturday, that it turned out to be, where I ended up sleeping for hours, like forever. It felt like forever. And then I woke up, I went to the gym, I ate, and then I went back to sleep forever again. It was ridiculous. But yeah. So what I was getting at and what I was saying is that I think sometimes people want too much for everybody to accept the same reality, and that's just not gonna be possible, because there are people that have millions of dollars in the world, millions and millions of dollars. So their reality is they can buy anything they want at any time, like literally anything they want, any house, any car, like any shopping, anything they want to do is a reality. It's possible for them to do that. And then there are some people that are so broke that it's really not a reality. They just cannot afford to do that. It wouldn't be possible for them, for some people, like even going out for a night out of the week and having a nice dinner, or going to a movie. And sometimes it's even an either or situation. It's not like they can go to a movie and a nice dinner at the same time. It's an either or. They're either going to go out to a movie, or they're going to go out to a nice dinner. And some people can't even afford a super nice spot for dinner, And so that's some people's reality, is that it's just not in it for them like that, or they don't have it like that. And so sometimes my online audience doesn't understand that I am willing to accept a lot of people's reality. And then when it comes to, people will talk about trans and non-binary, like I said, or I'll talk about that on my videos. And sometimes the people that follow me or like me will be a little too stringent about that in the way that they see things and what people can do. And my thing is always just, you're not going to tell me what I'm going to do, but I don't care what you do. If you want to identify by they them pronouns, and yeah, I think it's silly, and yeah, I think it makes the community, the LGBTQIA plus community, look trivial, and it's not something that I want to feed into. But at the same time, I'm not going to try to stop you from doing that. And I don't even hate you or really dislike you for doing that. I don't think you're helping us. But at the same time, what am I going to do about it? I have very few opinions about, or I have opinions about everything just like everybody else does, but not really, because there's certain things that I shrug so much off because I just don't really care what most people do. And sometimes, since people are so adamant about the way others conduct themselves, I really will kind of scan my brain sometimes and just be like, is that something I should care about, or is that something I should concern myself with? And the answer is almost always no. And it's like, not even is it or should I, but just in a natural way, do I, is all I have to ask myself sometimes. It's just like, do I care about that? And the answer is usually no. So when I have other people that maybe want to get mad at me because they think I'm supposed to have this set of values and principles that line up with everything that they check the boxes for, or that they think is a big deal or should really matter, and then they realize that I'm not going to do that, and just because of the way that my thinking works, it's not even possible for me to do that, because so much just gets by me because I really don't pay attention to other people that much. And so a lot of the stuff that I do online, yeah, it has my actual opinions or ideals or what my ideal would be in the way that situations work out or the way that some of these people would learn how to respect people at least, or have some kind of, and I mean the people that identify as the non-binary, and like a lot of those people, a lot of the reason that nobody goes along with what they want is because they're not likable people and they don't know how to charm people into treating them the way that they want to be treated. They think that they're going to be able to bulldoze people. And if you were that strong, you probably wouldn't be wearing the other gender's clothes. Okay, that's shady. But it's kind of true with a lot of these people, where it's like, yeah, everything you're doing outwardly is designed to make people think you're a strong person, but all I have to do is ask you a simple question about what it is you are, and your response to that is 9 out of 10 times going to show me that you're actually a very weak person, because you can't even answer a question. Instead, you'll get upset, you'll get offended, you'll start trying to puff up like a puffer fish, and I'm going to see through you and just be like, that's what I thought. You're weak and you're not really anything except for looking to belong. Because that is what it is with a lot of these people, is where they really are just looking to belong. And then if you notice, and this isn't me being superficial, even though people would think I will. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, they're not attractive people. And what happens with unattractive people? A lot of the world doesn't pay attention to them. So if they put on this costume and then people cheer them on for being brave and trans, even if they're not trans and even if they're not actually doing anything to be brave, they'll still get that recognition from people, and at least people are finally paying attention to them. A lot of times, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing people act out on social media or sometimes in real life does really come from a place of being invisible for most of their lives. That's one thing I have noticed. Being invisible, weak, and cowardly. That's why they're so brave online, but once you talk to them in real life, they really do, in a lot of cases, shrink. And I say this because when I was in LA, and I'm not really proud of this, but I'm also not ashamed of it either. But there were people that would really talk crazy to me on Facebook, was the big platform at the time for everybody I knew, the LA comedy scene at that time. And some people would really be disrespectful with me on Facebook. And I would, because they were LA comics as well, I would confront them in person. Like when I would see them, I would actually confront them about it. And I was as nice as you could be when you're really punking somebody out, because I would punk them out. But they would always either try to ignore me at first, or they would try to switch up their story and be like, well, I was just saying. And it was like, no, actually what you said was, and I would remind them of things that they had said, or, the way that they had behaved with me online. And so, it's like, it really is. It's not me being shady, but it really is in a lot of cases. People that feel invisible, they're also cowardly, and they don't have good social skills in a lot of cases either. It's like everything that can be wrong with people is usually wrong with these people. And they're just looking for people to finally pay attention to them, to finally notice them, to finally acknowledge their existence. And like the saying goes, bad attention is better than no attention. So they're happy to have people ridicule them. They're happy to be making fools of themselves, because otherwise they would go through life being invisible. And maybe that's part of the reason that, we always have to worry about things like suicide in the community is because a lot of people just go unnoticed. And, when it comes to the gay scene specifically, LGBT has, I guess, become a lot more body positive, and so have parts of gay. But really, the gay community has always been very superficial and very much about the aesthetic. And so that's the other place that a lot of these people will really get ignored, is because they don't fit in as far as that standard goes either. So it's like I mentioned all the other things that are already wrong with them as far as being insecure and, cowardly and timid in a lot of cases, and just all the things that you can be that would make you socially undesirable, and on top of it, not attractive, not in the best shape, that kind of thing. And then now they get told that they can be any way they want to. They don't need to fit any kind of beauty standard. They don't need to be brave at all. They don't need to be courageous in any level, which I know that goes with bravery, but at the same time, there's a difference, like a person can be stupid brave and not be courageous, which to me, courageous has more of a point. Courageous usually is for something. Brave could be having to walk on the side of a cliff, like that kind of thing, and for no other reason but just to get there, and you're just brave enough that you don't think about it. But it's people are their own thing, and I'm not trying to stop them from being that anyway. Like, go on, be cowardly, be unattractive, be all the things that you are, and hopefully it leads you somewhere, and hopefully you find yourself, and hopefully one day. Well, I guess now that I think about it, this might have seemed like me subbing on people this whole but I promise I haven't been. I've just been telling stories or things that I've noticed, observations that I've made. Cause like I'm very well aware that I'm getting older, and one day I'll be gone. And that isn't I have to tell you guys every episode, it's not a wellness check. We're doing okay. It's not that kind of situation. But just as you get older, you do start to think about your mortality, and you do start to think about, like, what do I want people to know or learn from me, or what is it I think I can impart to people? Because I've kind of decided after the Bijou situation that I'm not ever gonna have a kid. I will have another dog again. I will have another baby, but I will not have a kid in my life, because I I'm not built for that after all, like I thought I wanted that, but I'm not built for that. I'm not emotionally strong enough to have a kid. And I will accept that about myself, and I don't want to fix that. I don't want to, so nobody has to jump in and say you'd be a great father. I mean, like I feel like I would be a great father in certain ways, but I know I'm just not emotionally strong enough for that kind of love. I had Bijou when she was a doggy, and she damn near broke me, like emotionally broke me when she left. And like I said, I'm doing better now, but I learned my lesson as far as emotionally what I can and can't take. And I never loved anything like that or anybody like that. I'm sure I love my parents like that, but I never had to lose them, and hopefully I never do. But who knows what anything is going to bring. I just, like I said, I do sometimes think about things as far as what I would want for people to actually catch from me or hear from me. And so, if anybody were to ever come across this podcast in the future, Um, I think there were some things I said in here that would tell them kind of what I think makes you desirable in the world. And I know I did mention like the superficial stuff, like as far as looks and being physically attractive. But like the hack to that nobody seems to understand is that if you're a good enough person, that a lot of people don't worry about that. And that's really what will make people shine when we look at people and we're like, they're not attractive, but everybody likes them and everybody wants to be around them, and they always have a partner or they've had the same partner for a long time. And a lot of times, that partner or their partners are kind of what you would consider out of their league when it just comes to the looks department. And that's because they figured out the hack that, like I said, if you're a good enough person, if you're a smart enough person, if you're a courageous enough person, if you're a kind enough person, that will make you attractive enough that people will gravitate towards you. And then you can have everything you want without having to make a spectacle of yourself and say that you're a they and a them and a non binary. But stay unbothered.